I knew something was off as soon as I walked through the front door of my parents' house. It wasn't the smell of the burgers sizzling on the grill or the faint, familiar hum of my aunt's old stereo in the background. It wasn't even the usual clutter of coats and shoes piled up in the entryway. No, it was her Lily. Lily was always the center of attention. Always. And not in the kind of way where people gravitated to her because she was charismatic or charming. No, she had a gift, or maybe it was a curse, for making people laugh. Often at the expense of someone else. The joke, she always called it, just a prank, or nothing serious. But I knew better. I didn't really want to come to this party. My mom had been nagging me all week, guilt-tripping me into attending. You never come anymore, Sarah. It'll be good to see everyone. It was a classic guilt trip. And if I'm being honest, I was already dreading it. It wasn't like I didn't love my family. I did. But after everything that had happened last year, I wasn't as eager to see them as I once was. When Lily saw me, her smile was too wide. A little too eager. It was the kind of smile that said, I know something you don't. I tried not to make eye contact. But of course, she knew exactly how to pull me into her orbit. Sarah, you came. Her voice was always too loud. And the way she said my name like it was a game made my stomach twist. Yeah, well, I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. Couldn't say no to Mom. I could feel the weight of the conversation coming. Lily had this way of making everything feel like a performance. Like the room was her stage and everyone was a potential audience for whatever absurdity she had planned. I tried to shake it off. After all, it was just a family party. Right, a little barbecue with aunts, uncles, and cousins. People would eat, drink, laugh, and go home. Nothing to worry about. As I walked into the backyard, I saw my cousins chatting by the picnic table. The sound of children running through sprinklers filled the air. I felt the warmth of the sun on my back, but there was still something gnawing at me. A pressure. Maybe it was just the weight of all the eyes that seemed to be on me. I tried to ignore it. I joined my parents at the table, where they were talking about some new house project they were working on. Nothing unusual. The conversation flowed around me, but my mind wandered back to Lily. Every time she caught my eye, her grin only grew wider. I should have known. I should have seen the signs. But I didn't. After what felt like an eternity, my sister stood up from her chair and called everyone's attention to the center of the yard. It wasn't uncommon for her to take charge during family gatherings, especially when she had a game in mind. She was always organizing things. At first, it was just innocent fun, but I was starting to feel uneasy. I watched as she waved a hand to gather everyone, her eyes scanning the crowd. Hey, everybody, she shouted, her voice piercing through the laughter and clinking of glasses. I've got a little game for us to play. It's a real party starter. I felt a wave of anxiety roll through me. I knew exactly what that meant. Lily's games were always designed to get people laughing, to get them talking about whatever she could make happen. The fact that she was looking at me, eyes gleaming, only confirmed my suspicion. She was setting me up for something, but I couldn't be sure what. She grabbed a bag from the corner of the yard and pulled out an old deck of cards. All right, Sarah, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. I need you to help me demonstrate this. It's called the trust game. Everyone pair up. My heart sank. I didn't even have to ask. I knew exactly what this was going to be. Lily had a knack for playing these games that ended in making someone look ridiculous. I wasn't sure how to respond. There was a knot in my stomach, but the pressure to go along with it was overwhelming. The last thing I wanted was to look like a party pooper. So, like an idiot, I got up. All right, what do I do? I asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Lily grinned. All you have to do is stand in front of the crowd and trust me. A cold sweat dripped down my back as I tried to laugh it off. Trust you? What does that mean? You'll see, she said cryptically, and before I could react, Lily turned to the crowd, clapping her hands together. Everyone, gather around. This is going to be epic. A wave of murmurs and chuckles rippled through the group. I could hear some of my cousins whispering excitedly, but it all felt like a bad dream. I wanted to back out, but it was too late. The focus was on me. The audience was waiting. Lily handed me a piece of paper. This is the challenge, she said, trying to keep a straight face but failing miserably. All you have to do is read the instructions on the paper. Simple enough, right? The moment I opened the piece of paper, I felt my face flush red. It was a set of embarrassing, almost childlike tasks that I was supposed to perform in front of everyone. Dance like a chicken. I was supposed to pretend I was giving a speech to an imaginary audience. Then, the final task, I had to sing a song in front of the entire family. The laughter started before I even finished reading it. "You've got this, Sarah," someone shouted from the crowd. It was all I could do to hold back the tears. Everyone was staring at me, laughing. I wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. I could feel my heart racing, my breath short and shallow. The noise around me was muffled by the deafening sound of my own heartbeat. The crowd's laughter rang in my ears, each chuckle slicing through me. I felt betrayed, but worse, I felt small, like I was some clown to entertain their amusement. A pawn in Lily's game. The laughter echoed in my ears long after the party had ended. It was hard to escape it. My mind replayed the moments over and over again, like a cruel, looping film I couldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, the grins, their eyes wide with amusement, and their voices, some too loud and some too quiet, but all of them mocking. It was one of those moments when you wish you could just disappear from the face of the earth, slip into the ground, or shrink to the size of a speck of dust. But no, the laughter didn't stop once I left the backyard. It followed me. It followed me home, into the stillness of my empty room where I tried to wash off the feeling of being on display. I took a shower, even though I couldn't remember why. The hot water stung, but it didn't do anything to cleanse me. Not of the shame, not of the embarrassment. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gotten so bad. My mind kept circling back to Lily, the sister I had once looked up to, the sister I had always been close to. But now, something had changed. She wasn't the person I thought she was. And I wasn't the person I thought I was either. The next few days were a blur. I tried to avoid my family. My mom kept calling, her voice full of concern. "Sarah, are you okay? You've barely talked to anyone since the party." "I'm fine," I told her, forcing the words out. "Just tired." It wasn't just tiredness that kept me away from everyone, though. It was the weight of it all. Every text from a family member, every message from a friend, every casual comment from someone who had been at the party, it all brought the prank back. The more they referenced it, the more they laughed about it, the more I felt like a joke that had stopped being funny the second I realized I was the punchline. Lily, of course, didn't help. She sent me a text a day later. "Hey, that was fun, right? Can't believe everyone loved it. Closing parenthesis quote. It stung, the casual tone in her message. As if it were nothing. As if what had happened didn't matter. I ignored her text. But the next morning, when my mom called again, something inside me snapped. "Mom, I don't think you understand. It wasn't just a joke. It was humiliating. And Lily, she knew exactly what she was doing. She's been doing this for years." My voice was shaky, the anger bubbling up in me, so hot and overwhelming that I couldn't contain it. "She doesn't care. No one cares." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Sarah, sweetie, you're overreacting. It was a joke. It was just a prank. Your sister didn't mean anything by it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's the problem," I spat out. "She never means anything by it. She doesn't get it. She's been doing this for years. Making fun of me, making me the target of her jokes. And everyone just laughs and brushes it off because it's Lily being Lily." Mom didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she sighed. "I'll talk to her, but maybe you should try to let this go. Sarah, let it go." How could I let it go? How could I let my sister and my family erase my feelings just because they thought it was funny? How could I go on pretending it didn't matter? I spent the next few days in silence. The anger didn't subside, but it shifted. It started to feel less like rage and more like something cold. Something calculating. I began to think about how far I was willing to let this go. Let them all get away with it. To let Lily get away with it. To let my mom dismiss it. Let my dad pretend it wasn't a big deal. At night, I couldn't sleep. I would lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I knew that what Lily had done went beyond a joke. She had embarrassed me in front of everyone. She had made me the object of their amusement. And the damage it caused wasn't something I could just laugh off. A week passed. The awkwardness between me and Lily lingered in the air, thick and uncomfortable. She kept texting, calling, sending half-hearted apologies, but nothing could undo what had happened. I kept pushing her away, refusing to engage with her. The more she reached out, the more I pulled back. I started to question everything. My relationship with my sister, My place in the family. My own sense of self-worth. What kind of person was I to let this continue? To let her walk all over me and make me feel like I didn't matter? I sat in my apartment one evening, my mind racing. I looked at the blank space on my desk where a pile of legal documents sat. The thought had crossed my mind more than once, but I had never taken it seriously suing my sister. It felt insane at first, like I was considering something I would never do. But as I let the idea settle in my mind, it started to feel right. She had crossed a line. She had humiliated me in front of everyone I loved. And they had laughed. They had all laughed. The humiliation, the shame, it had been real. But it was so easy for them to brush it off. So easy for them to make it my fault. As if I should just let it go. As if it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal. I knew what I had to do. I had to hold her accountable. I had to make her understand that actions had consequences. That no one had the right to treat me like that. I didn't make the decision lightly. The thought of suing my sister felt alien. Wrong even. But as the days went by, I realized I couldn't keep living with this weight on my shoulders. I couldn't keep letting it eat at me while my family acted like it was nothing. I found a lawyer, someone with experience in cases involving emotional distress and defamation. I didn't care how much it would cost. I needed to make a statement. I needed to show them that I wasn't going to be anyone's joke anymore. The first meeting with the lawyer was surreal. He explained the process, the legal hurdles I'd have to jump through, the potential outcomes, and the emotional toll it would take on me. But he also told me that I had a case. The prank had been more than just a harmless joke, it had been an act of humiliation. Something that could be classified as emotional abuse. And in his words, "You don't have to let this slide, Sarah. You don't have to forgive her just because she's family." That's when I knew, this was it. I was going to sue my sister. The day I filed the lawsuit against my sister, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions, fear, relief, and an overwhelming sense of validation. I had been thinking about it for days, rehearsing the decision over and over in my mind. At first, the idea of suing Lily had seemed almost absurd. But now, with the papers in front of me and the lawyer's reassuring words echoing in my head, I knew I was doing the right thing. The moment I handed over the legal documents at the courthouse, I felt an odd detachment from everything. The process was cold, mechanical, but it was also a catalyst. My actions weren't about revenge. I told myself, they were about reclaiming control. They were about setting a boundary that no one could cross. When I told my mom, I wasn't prepared for her reaction. "Sarah, you can't be serious," she said, her voice tight. "This is Lily we're talking about. Your sister. It's just a joke." I sat down across from her, my hands trembling. "Mom, you don't get it. You never do. Lily crossed a line, and I can't just ignore it anymore. She humiliated me in front of everyone. And you and Dad, all of you let her do it." My mom's face softened, but there was no apology in her eyes. "I know it wasn't easy, sweetie, but this, suing your sister, it'll tear the family apart." "Then let it tear the family apart," I said, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. "I'm tired of pretending everything's fine. It's not fine, Mom. It's never been fine." I wasn't sure if I was more angry at Lily or at my parents. They were supposed to protect me, but instead, they had always swept her behavior under the rug. Maybe they didn't see it as a big deal, but I did, and I couldn't keep living like this, feeling invisible, like my feelings didn't matter. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends and family, most of them expressing confusion, disappointment, and even anger. They all thought I was overreacting. Some tried to reason with me, others just ignored it entirely. Lily, on the other hand, was relentless. She texted, called, and even showed up at my door one evening. "Sarah, please," she begged through the door, her voice muffled by the wood. "I'm so sorry. It was just a stupid prank. I never meant to hurt you." I stood at the door, my hand on the knob, my heart racing. Every instinct in me wanted to open the door and forgive her. To tell her it was fine. To pretend it never happened. But I couldn't. I pressed my forehead against the door, the weight of it all sinking into me. "You don't get it, Lily," I whispered. "You've been doing this for years. And this time, I'm done. I'm not playing along anymore." There was a long silence on the other side of the door. For a brief moment, I thought she was gone. But then I heard her voice, softer now. "I don't know what to say," she muttered. "You're taking this way too seriously." I exhaled sharply. "Goodbye, Lily." I locked the door and turned away. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe, like the air around me was too thick. But at the same time, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be comfortable. But it was necessary. Weeks passed in a blur of legal paperwork and quiet anticipation. My lawyer guided me through the process, explaining everything, reassuring me that the case was solid. But even so, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Every time I saw a headline about a celebrity suing a family member or a story about a lawsuit going wrong, my stomach churned. The day of the hearing arrived sooner than I expected. I woke up early, my nerves already frayed, and dressed in the most professional outfit I could find. I wanted to look strong, like someone who knew what she was doing. But inside, I felt like a child, uncertain and small. I kept wondering if this was all just a mistake, if I had miscalculated. When I arrived at the courthouse, my stomach twisted even further. The building felt cold and impersonal, with its grey stone exterior and narrow hallways. My lawyer met me at the entrance, offering me a reassuring smile that did little to calm my nerves. "We'll get through this, Sarah," he said as we walked through the crowded hall. "Just stick to the facts. You're in control here." But control felt so fragile. My sister was sitting in the courtroom, staring at me with a mixture of confusion and hurt in her eyes. She didn't understand why I was doing this. In her world, she had done nothing wrong. In her mind, this was just another prank, something funny that had gone a little too far. But I knew what it had cost me. The embarrassment, the loss of self-respect, the way everyone had laughed. It wasn't a joke anymore. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the stand, my palms clammy, my heart racing in my chest. I tried to focus on my lawyer's instructions, to take a deep breath and steady myself. But as I began to recount the events of that day, the party, the prank, the humiliation, it felt like everything came rushing back in a flood of anger and shame. "I didn't want to be the joke," I said, my voice steady, but the emotion was there, raw and unfiltered. "I didn't ask for this. And I don't think it's okay to use someone's pain as a punchline. Especially when it's family. It wasn't just a prank. It was meant to humiliate me." I could feel Lily's eyes on me, could feel the weight of her gaze drilling into me as I spoke. But I didn't break. I couldn't break. After I finished speaking, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. My lawyer gave me a brief, encouraging nod, and I returned to my seat, feeling more exhausted than I had ever felt in my life. The case was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was fighting for something bigger than just myself. I was fighting for my dignity, for my peace of mind, for the woman I wanted to be, not the woman my sister had tried to mold me into. The weeks after the hearing felt like they went on forever. The uncertainty hung in the air like a storm cloud, and every day I woke up wondering how the case would turn out. In the back of my mind, I knew that no matter what happened in court, things between Lily and I would never be the same. The final ruling came on a cold Tuesday afternoon. The judge ruled in my favor. The prank had gone too far, and it was deemed to have caused significant emotional distress. Lily was ordered to pay for part of my legal fees, though the decision was far less about money and more about the acknowledgement that what had happened was wrong. It wasn't the kind of ruling that would fix everything. It didn't erase the humiliation or the pain, but it felt like justice, like someone had finally heard me. When I called my mom with the news, there was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her deep breaths, her struggle to say something. Finally, she spoke. "You really did it." "Huh, I did," I said, "and I don't regret it." The phone call ended abruptly after that. There was no apology, no offer of support. The rift between us was growing, and I wasn't sure how to bridge it. I had fought for myself, but at what cost? The family that once stood united was now fractured, with Lily on one side, and me on the other. But I knew something had changed. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that party. I wasn't the same person who had allowed Lily to make me the punchline of every joke. I had found my voice, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had the strength to stand up for myself. In the end, it wasn't about winning the case or the money. It was about finding the courage to stop being afraid, to stop letting the people closest to me walk all over me. I was worth more than that. And as I sat in my room, looking out the window, I realized that the future was still mine to shape. It wouldn't be easy, but it was mine. The court ruling had come as a shock to everyone in the family, but especially to Lily. Her silence in the weeks following the judgment said more than words ever could. She didn't call, didn't send texts, she didn't apologize. But then again, I didn't expect her to. Not in the way I needed her to. As for my parents, things had changed too. My mom and dad tried to keep things as normal as possible. But there was a distance now, a space that hadn't been there before, a gap in understanding that neither of them had ever bothered to acknowledge until now. A few days after the ruling, my mom came to see me. She didn't knock, just walked right into my apartment as though nothing had changed. But everything had. "Can we talk?" she asked, sitting down on the couch across from me. Her voice was gentle, but I could hear the tension underneath it. The wariness. She was walking on eggshells, unsure how to approach me. I couldn't blame her. I nodded, but I didn't speak. I wasn't sure what there was to say. "I've been thinking a lot," she started, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve, her eyes downcast. "About everything. About the lawsuit. About Lily. And about you." She paused, her voice wavering. "Sarah, I never thought it would go this far. I thought it would blow over. I thought you'd be okay." "I wasn't okay, Mom," I said quietly. My voice was calm, almost too calm, and that worried me. But I couldn't change it now. "I wasn't okay. I've been trying to tell you for years. But you and Dad always brushed it off. You always thought Lily's jokes were just the jokes. But they weren't, Mom. They were mean." She reached out and took my hand. Her grip surprisingly strong. Her fingers trembled, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. The sorrow. "I didn't know. I never knew it was hurting you that much. And I'm sorry." It was the first time I'd heard her say those words in relation to me. And I wanted to believe them. I really did, but part of me still felt like it wasn't enough. That apology was just words. I needed more. "I don't know if I can forgive you for not seeing it," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. The vulnerability I'd kept buried for so long was beginning to spill over. "I needed you, Mom. I needed you to see that I wasn't just the easy target. That I was a person too. You didn't see that, and it hurt." She squeezed my hand tighter, but I could feel her pulling back emotionally. Her walls slowly rebuilding. She wasn't ready for the depth of what I was saying. I could see that in her eyes. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. I didn't know how to fix it either. But I couldn't keep living in this limbo, unable to trust the people who were supposed to protect me. "Maybe it can't be fixed," I said. "Maybe some things can't be undone. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen anymore." Mom nodded, her lips trembling as if she was on the verge of crying. "I understand." And I knew, in that moment, that she did. In her own way, she understood. Lily never did reach out after the judgment. In fact, the silence between us only deepened as the weeks turned into months. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself I was done with her, that if she wasn't willing to apologize, then I didn't need her in my life. But the truth was more complicated than that. At night, when I lay in bed, I would wonder if she regretted it. If she missed me, if she wished she had done things differently. I would replay all the moments in our childhood, when we used to talk and laugh and share secrets like best friends. Those memories felt so distant now. A different life, a different time. But even as I tried to convince myself that I was better off without her, I knew I wasn't. Part of me was still that little girl who had looked up to her older sister. The one who would have done anything for her, would have followed her to the ends of the earth if she asked. Part of me missed that sister, the one who would have stood by me when I needed her most. But I knew, deep down, that the sister I had once known was gone. Maybe she had never existed at all. And maybe it was time to stop longing for someone who would never be the person I wanted her to be. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life, piece by piece. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always smooth. The emotional toll of the lawsuit weighed on me, even as I tried to convince myself that I had done the right thing. But in the end, it was worth it. I moved out of my apartment and into a new place, one that felt like a fresh start. I met new people, made new friends, and slowly, I started to feel like myself again. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that party who had allowed herself to be the punchline of Lily's jokes. I found a therapist, someone who helped me work through the lingering feelings of guilt and shame that I had carried with me for so long. I began to unpack the emotional scars that had been left behind by my family's refusal to see me. I was learning to trust myself again, to trust my instincts, to set boundaries where they had never existed before. And somewhere along the way, I learned to forgive myself for not speaking up sooner, for letting things go on as long as they had, for letting my family's expectations dictate my own happiness. But the most important lesson I learned was that it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you even if they're family. Family doesn't always have to come first, especially when it costs you your peace of mind. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself, not for anyone else's expectations. As I sat in my new apartment, looking out the window at the city lights, I knew that everything I had gone through, everything I had endured had led me to this moment. A moment of freedom. Lily wasn't in my life anymore. My parents, too, were distanced, though they still tried to reach out now and then. But I was okay. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor. And for the first time in a long time, I was proud of who I had become. A few months later, as winter gave way to spring, something unexpected happened. I came home from work one afternoon to find a letter waiting for me on my doorstep. The envelope was unmarked, no return address, but as soon as I saw it, I knew who it was from. I hesitated before opening it, my heart racing. I wasn't sure what I expected, another apology, another excuse, or maybe just more silence. But when I unfolded the letter and began to read, my breath caught in my throat. Sarah, I don't know where to begin. There's so much I want to say, but I don't think words will ever be enough. I was wrong. What I did was unforgivable. But I'm asking for your forgiveness anyway. I don't expect you to respond, but I want you to know that I see what I did now. And I'm so sorry. I miss you. I miss us. Lily. I sat there, staring at the letter, my emotions all tangled up. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to pretend I hadn't read it, to keep the walls I had built around myself strong and intact. But another part of me, something softer, something more hopeful, wondered if this was the beginning of healing. I didn't know what to do with the letter. Maybe I never would. But one thing was clear. I wasn't that same person I had been before. I had changed, and whether I ever saw Lily again or not, I was okay.